Welcome.
It's time for the further adventures of Indiana Jones.
I could have been your greatest adventure.
No, frankly, no!
Pack your bag, grab your passport, and prepare to go globetrotting with Marvel Comics' classic four-color adventures of Indiana Jones.
Indiana Jones.
So what are you supposed to be, a lion tamer?
I'm a tenured professor of archaeology.
That's gonna be a big help.
I'm here now. What do you want to talk about?
Happy anniversary, happy anniversary, happy anniversary, happy anniversary.
Well, thanks, fellas. It sure was.
She and Happy, they're both as happy as can be, celebrating merrily their happy anniversary.
A classic. I love the Flintstones.
Oh, I do too. And, every time I hear it, I know somebody is having an anniversary. Welcome, IndieCast listeners. I'm Joe Stuber. He's Keith Voss. Keith, any guesses as to what the anniversary is?
Well, we did have the 31st anniversary of Raiders on June the 12th.
That we did.
And the 28th anniversary of Temple of Doom on May 23rd.
Your favorite Indiana Jones movie. Yes, that is true. That was that anniversary.
And Last Crusade's 23rd anniversary on May the 24th.
A lot of indie movies coming out in the summer, I guess.
Yeah.
They all did. That's true. 23rd, yep, sure.
And we also have 4 years for Crystal Skull on May the 22nd. It is the summer of Indy, you're right. Every summer is the summer of Indy, I guess.
Every summer is the summer of Indy, that's right. But you left out one important anniversary.
That's right. It was 1 year ago that you and I started the Further Adventures of Indiana Jones segment right here on the IndieCast.
Happy anniversary, my friend.
Happy anniversary to you.
Yes. Okay, all right, enough already.
But I never get enough of So I Married an Axe Murderer.
I love Mike Myers, so...
It's a classic.
Hey, big thanks to Ed for letting us do this, for giving us this sort of platform to come in and talk about our favorite comic book series. You and I were doing this on the telephone anyway, and we just thought at some point we might as well just start recording some of these.
Yeah, we figured maybe someone else out there might want to listen to this as well. So, yes, thanks a lot, Ed. We really appreciate this. And thanks a lot to all the listeners, everybody that's written in, everybody that's joined the Facebook page recently. We just recently got a bunch of new likes on our Facebook page, so that's pretty cool. So thanks to everybody and to our guests.
Yeah, our guests as well. Richard Howell, Michael Golden, Denny O'Neill, Joe Duffy, Walt Simonson, Louise Simonson, David Michelini, Ron Friends, Elliot Brown. Man, the whole Mighty Marvel bullpen.
And the list will go on.
The list will go on. Yes, it does. And, you mentioned it was a Summer of Indy. It's Summer of Indy here on Further Adventures as well. We're just going to take this all summer long. We're going to have a summer-long anniversary celebration. We just had our review of issue number 6, kicking off our 1-year anniversary celebration with yet another member of that Mighty Marvel bullpen. Keith, who is that?
Oh, the artist behind issue number 6. And he's done several of the Further Adventure covers as well. None other than Howard Chaykin.
That's right, Howard Chaykin. And you might recall our own Mitchell Halleck caught up with Mr. Chaykin a couple of years ago at the Baltimore Comic-Con. So you can listen to that interview on IndieCast episode 112. So if you want to go back and check that out. But since we kickstarted the segment, we wanted to check in with as many of the creators as we could and get their take on some of the specifics for some of the issues that they did. So there were a few details that we wanted to talk to Mr. Chaykin about regarding issue number 6 and some of those covers that he worked on. And as you'll see, and Keith, as you know, this has become somewhat of a regular feature in these interviews. We uncovered some interesting details about lost Indiana Jones comic adventures.
Yeah, a bombshell. I mean, our jaws hit the ground when we heard about that.
I love these interviews. Yeah, we get to talk to these creators, and all of a sudden it's like you find out, oh, there's this Indiana Jones adventure I was working on. And it's like, I'd love to find out more about these, and we do.
Yeah, we do. We had a chance to sit down with Mr. Chaykin at the hottest nightclub in town, the Raven's Nest. And we glad we got this interview in early because, as you heard on the last IndieCast, the Raven's Nest didn't last very long.
Stupid Jamal. He blew it up. He blew it up.
You maniac! You blew it up!
But Indy got insurance, the club's being rebuilt, so we'll be able to have more guests from the Mighty Marvel bullpen over at the Raven's Nest soon enough.
Boy, it's a mess over there right now, but there's a lot of work going on at the Raven's Nest, so we're getting it there. But let's check in with our interview at the Raven's Nest when it was still standing with Mr. Howard Chaykin. Well, we have another fantastic guest here for the IndieCast. Certainly no stranger to the world of comic books. Star Wars, Further Adventures of Indiana Jones, a ton of Marvel and DC characters, American Flag, a lot of different titles on this man's resume. Howard Chaykin. Mr. Chaykin, thank you very much for visiting us once again.
Hey, thanks so much for having me. I'm most grateful.
And we talked about, we're talking about the world of comic books, but before we get into the actual books themselves, I thought it'd be interesting to sojourn into Hollywood just for a second. Many of our listeners probably don't know that you actually worked on the Flash TV series, the one that starred John Wesley Shipp, didn't you?
It was my first TV gig. And,
how did you get involved in that? Because that was Keith and I loved that show.
Absolutely.
Well, thank you. That's
Great.
very kind. My then writing partner, and I were in New York, finalizing the deal for a 5-issue miniseries at DC Comics, which never happened. And I got a call from my then agent who said that we were up for an episode of the series, and we came out, and of course she was wrong. We were actually up for a staff job on the show, which was a treat. They got us unbelievably cheap, and my writing partner and I then hired onto the series. We wrote 6 originals, did 2 teleplays based on other people's stories, and rewrote a lot of freelancers. We were since our executive producers were wrapped up and involved with doing the polish on a draft of a picture for Disney at the time, The Rocketeer, and they fired another writing team from the show shortly after we began production, actually in pre-production rather. My writing partner and I it devolved to the low men on the totem pole to end up being the flagship writers on the show. We sort of set the tone for the material. And got good props. It was a good job. It was a great fun, a great experience.
Now, this was coming hot and heavy off the heels of the Batman movie, so it was very sort of reminiscent about that. They even got the same Danny Elfman to do the music on this. So did you kind of get that vibe that, man, we're riding a big tidal wave here coming in off of this, just coming in right off the bat?
No, not at all. I mean, basically, we knew we were the network. One of the things that you have to remember is television in the 20 some odd years that since the show has been on, has changed radically, and television become much more a niche-based business, the way magazines did after the collapse of the fiction magazine. And back then, CBS was attempting to expand its breadth, and CBS was identified as the old person's network. It was an old man's station. And they couldn't figure out a way to sell the show. There was no other companion series to team it up with or to sell it on. They tried everything. Sagansky put it on at 8:30. We were up against the Cosby Show. We were just doomed. Had the show been on Fox, it would have run for 5 years.
I think you're up against The Simpsons too, right?
Yes, we were just screwed.
Yeah,
Flash. Well, even the Flash couldn't outrun those shows. I think.
No, I mean, and it was. I wrote at the time. My first episode was the single most expensive hour of television ever produced.
Wow.
Jeez.
And there was this idea that Batman's success in the theaters would translate to a success of the sort on TV, and it proved that wasn't the case.
Yeah. Well, you know what? I'm telling you what. I'm staring at the box set right now. So you got 2 fans sitting here all these years later that still love it. So there's something to be said for it.
You know, it was a great experience. I love being on the Warner's lot. Was a great place to work. I worked with great people, guys I'm still friendly with today, and I just, I remember back that the show that I ran into Karen Allen, I ran into John Shipp as well. John and I spent some time together.
Oh, cool.
And and I ran into to Alex Dessert about a year ago in New York City. So I still touch base. And
well, the Flash was obviously a very famous comic book character. What are your earliest memories of reading your first comic books?
Well, for me, I got turned on to comics when I was 4. I had a cousin who was some 5 years older than I am who gave me a refrigerator box filled with comics. And in those days, you read comics. You didn't read a genre of comics. He read everything. It was funny animals, westerns, crime, war, monsters, horror, superheroes. And I just loved everything about them. I can still when I walk into a used bookstore, I can still smell that mildewy, newsprinty smell.
I love it. I love that smell.
That so much catches that tone. But when I became a serious comic book reader was in the late 50s and early 60s, when the Silver Age stuff came along. Before the Marvel stuff happened, when Julie Schwartz was doing, the revivals of the Green Lantern stuff, The Flash and Hawkman. And I was a huge Gil Kane Green Lantern partisan, whereas my pal Michael was a huge Carmine Infantino Flash guy. And you couldn't love without hating the others. It was this constant rubbing up against each other. It was kind of look, you're 11 years old, you act like an idiot. And so I was a huge Gil Kane fan, and I grew to appreciate Carmine later in my career, and as I got older and became more professional.
So how did you translate that early affection for comic books? How did you translate that into, hey, I think I can make some money at this and get into illustrating?
I ever wanted to do for a living. I never had any idea of doing anything else. And bear in mind, I was never very talented or skilled, so I had to basically create and invent a nose to the grindstone sensibility that kept me going. I am far and away the least skilled and the least talented of my generation, and in that regard, I just became a workhorse, and that's what I do. I mean, I'm still doing it today.
Well, what was the first comic that you worked on, and now that you look back...
my own name or as an assistant?
Your own name. Let's say your own name. And what do you think about it now when you look back on it?
It's absolute wretch. I mean, I didn't get any good until 10 years into my career. I believe, for example, that I humiliated myself into technique. By working in public and doing work that was published and was so awful and is on my permanent record, and it still haunts me to this day, I was humiliated into and embarrassed into a skill set. And ultimately, I moved away from the kind of stoner laziness that defined me in my 20s to an obsessive compulsive behavior that came into being in the 30s, which persists today and actually increases as I get older.
And you had you talked about
very serious answers to these questions. I mean, I don't know. You're catching me at a very serious point.
Hey, no,
we'll play some somber music in the background, and some after school special music or something. You talked about being a workhorse. Getting onto Star Wars that was huge at Marvel. Some of the best issues that you got right from the start of that series, but only 10 issues and out.
Well, I wasn't very proud of the work I did. I'd like to think, maybe I'm flattering myself, that had I known the material was going to be as popular and big deal as it was, I might have done a better job. I can't say for sure that's the case. I was in San Francisco on Tuesday night, last week, a week ago night, talking about my experiences doing it. Steve Leolo and I were at the Cartoon Museum in San Francisco. And, mea culpa, mea maxima culpa. I feel that the material didn't translate as well to comics as it should have. I might have done a better job had I known it was going to be a bigger deal. But then that might just be me flattering myself. I don't know for sure.
What do you think was the problem?
I think I didn't have the skill set required to do as good a job as I should have done. I also think I was incredibly lazy.
The action, the spaceships...
No, I think I had other priorities. I mean, I was working for Byron Price at the time. I had other things going on. And bear in mind, I was 25 years old. It's we're talking about a remove of over 35 years. I'm a very different person than I was when I was 25. And unfortunately, I believe there are a lot of guys in comic books who are the same people they were when they were 25. And there's a stuntedness of growth that takes place. My sensibilities have changed radically.
Well, I
can look at my work of that period, my production of that period with an unjaundiced eye, and recognize the rawness and the lack of skill that defines so much of the work. I mean, and to a certain extent, there's a real garage band sensibility to comic books. Comic books is an aspirational field in that its fans are, generally speaking, people who want your job. And many, many people have become very successful in the comic book business by drawing just the way the fan would do if they only had the time or skill. And those guys, frankly, don't interest me very much, except in odd contexts. For example, I did the introduction to a collection of Crime Does Not Pay from the mid-'40s, the Lev Gleason and Charlie Biro stuff. And that stuff is just so crude and vital that it's just all id and superego just coming all over the page. But for the most part, I mean, I respect guys who are, incredibly skilled. I mean, I love Michael Golden's work. I love Eduardo Riso, Lionel Yu, Jose Garcia Lopez. And, I look at Lopez, and Lopez should be God, and nobody pays any attention to him. He's totally unregarded.
I had a chance to talk to Michael Golden last year. He did a couple of covers also for Further Adventures of Indiana Jones, some pretty cool covers. But something that we do think translates well to the comic book world is Indiana Jones.
I agree completely.
Yeah, I mean, what were some of the details about how you got involved with the Further Adventures of Indiana Jones? What was the first thing you remember hearing about that got you either motivated to work on the book? Or,
in those days, it was very difficult for guys with my sensibility to deliver a monthly product. So I jumped around a lot. I did this and that here and there. And I believe Wheezy Jones was editing the book, and David Michelini was writing it. And a lot of writers like working with me because I do most of their work. And we did that story. I think Michelini ended up writing the script, as I recall. And I had a good time. Terry did a great job inking it. And that's about it. I mean, I had, the gag about holding the Caruso records for as hostage was mine, obviously. That's so typical of me. And just the sensibility of the material was very much mine, as you can tell, I believe.
How does that work then when you get the script? And
I didn't have a script. That was not a script. No, please, don't be ridiculous. Basically, David and I chatted. I did the plot, and he wrote the dialogue. I mean, the story is mine. The dialogue is his.
Wow. Okay.
Just that's the bottom line.
Interesting.
Yeah, because we know there was originally Archie Goodwin had written some elements for a proposed Indiana Jones strip, newspaper strip, and so Michelini had kind of gotten some of those things. Yeah, so I guess he was able to take some of those. What's that?
Is that going to be with Al Williamson?
Possibly. Yeah, because when we spoke with Michelini, he had mentioned about that. So some of those ideas came from the.
Great start.
No, it's fascinating that it comes that artist, writer. And then taking from these other ideas, we see how these sort of things come together.
I didn't get to write a lot of my material at Marvel until later on because basically Marvel has always been a writer's house. DC was always an artist's house, and the fact is the writers ran Marvel to a great extent. And what happened was, as an artist who did a lot of his own writing and own plotting, I ended up making the writers' jobs much easier by doing a lot of their work for them. So my experiences back in those days at Marvel and less to a lesser extent at DC was that I was there to make. If I wanted to do my own kind of stories, I basically had to give away my piece of the writing. It's one of the reasons why I've ended up writing most of my own material.
Well, speaking of which, at a certain point in issue number 6, we see a different Indiana Jones style clothing-wise. He has glasses. He's wearing his fedora, of course. He's wearing a tweed jacket, a sweater vest. Was all that your idea, or was that description in what Michelini had mentioned?
No, Michelini didn't. You were backing up here. I did the story. I did the plot. Michelini applied dialogue. I drew the character as I felt he was appropriate in the context of the material.
Yeah, and it worked out great. Great.
Right.
Nice.
Before we're finished, I'll tell you about the abortive Indiana Jones thing I was supposed to be doing 2 years ago.
No, we'll definitely be asking you about that towards the end.
One thing I was thinking, we talk about this issue as well, is that this was a state of flux in the book. The early run of this, it just seemed like writers were coming on, artists were coming on. So there's a couple different covers you did. Some places source you as the credits on 7 and 8. We heard back from Mr. Gamble, and he said he did 7, and you definitely did 8, and that's something you and I talked about.
When I saw what you sent, I'm pretty sure that 8 was mine.
Yeah, 8 was definitely yours. So we want to make sure credit is given where credit is due. And Keith and I were talking about this beforehand. That's probably our favorite cover of the run. And we're not just saying that because we're talking to you right now, but that's definitely our favorite cover of the run.
For me, too, 6 being a close second. I really love the way 6 looks. I love that action shot of Indy just jumping on the boat. Very well colored.
I did
drawn.
3 covers. I think I did the cover with the action on the boat, the one with the skull, and then the one with him on the wing of the airplane.
Again, another great cover.
Yeah, no, when you're doing covers and you don't have – explain that to us and explain it to our listeners. Do you get to see anything? Do you get to see any of the interior artwork when you're just doing the covers of the book?
I honestly don't remember what I was working from in those cases. I have no memory of it whatsoever.
How about references?
I mean, you I have a very productive career. My body of work is huge, and I don't remember the details of this.
How about when you're drawing Indiana Jones?
But the material I did in the issue I drew is the splash and the sequence of the break into the house. That's about it.
How about when you're drawing Indiana Jones and Marion Ravenwood and these characters? What are you using for reference on such iconic characters, especially at the time when the movie was so huge?
Well, I was actually cartooning them. I mean, Harrison Ford was kind of hawk-faced in those days, and I knew Karen Allen more from movies like The Wanderers than anything else. I mean, my characterization of her was just a lot of freckles. She was an auburn-haired girl with freckles, and that's about it.
Speaking of Marion Ravenwood, issue number 6 was the first Marion Ravenwood issue where she returned. Were you aware of that? And if so, how did that affect your work on the book?
I don't recall, honest to God. Okay. I would admit something here that you may not want to hear. I'm not a huge fan of the movies. I grew up with the movie serials. I'm a huge fan of all that really crappy Monogram and Republic junk. I was a subscriber to Screen Thrills Illustrated in my boyhood, and I loved that junk. I grew up in New York City, and WPIX in New York, when this sort of stuff became vaguely hip in the mid-'60s, was running serials on a lot of the cartoon shows. So I got to see Tailspin Tommy and King of the Carnival and all this, Masked Marvel, which was basically a remake of a Lone Ranger serial. And I love this stuff. So by the time the Indiana Jones stuff came out, okay, I've seen all this stuff before, done on a minuscule scale, but I wasn't that interested. I think I've only seen 2 of the movies. I don't think I've seen the other.
Yeah.
I know I haven't seen the most recent one with Shia LaBeouf or whatever.
Well, with the Indiana Jones comic book series, though, I mean, you're talking about crazy action just going on all the time. How difficult is that to draw and to translate as compared to maybe even expositional dialogue scenes? Or what do you like to do? Do you prefer one over the other?
No, my feeling is I try to include expositional dialogue in the context of action, in acting and movement. One of the reasons why, for example, I love Eduardo Risso stuff so much, or Michael Golden stuff as much as I do, or a guy like Rick Burchett who gets no attention or props, is that these are guys who never have characters just sitting around chatting endless headshots. They get action and movement, and they have characterization in action and acting. That's the stuff I respect. One of the things about right now, comics are going through an excruciatingly dull period because it's being run by writers, and the writers themselves have very little visual sensibility. They write, overwrite, and write, overwrite on top of that, and they expect the artist to make dramatic and interesting images out of what are basically static, uninteresting images. And everybody's trying to solve this problem, and the solution is basically to have writers with a stronger visual sensibility, but most of the writers today think they are strongly visual, and they're not.
Is that why you prefer to just do everything yourself?
Yes, pretty much. Although there are writers that I love working with who have a strong visual sensibility.
Such as?
Fraction is one. Mark Guggenheim is another. These are guys who really have a handle on that.
One thing we'd be remiss in asking about is in the Indiana Jones book we're talking about, issue number 6, as he's breaking into Marco's house, he uses alum as a weapon against the dogs, and we have this shot of these dogs with these puckered muscles.
Right.
Did you do a lot of extensive research with Looney Tunes cartoons?
Got it, baby. I grew up watching. That's exactly the.
That's all. We mentioned that constantly. We were talking Sylvester and Tweety, and
is that you or Michelinie?
Oh my God!
I was bullshitting my way through it with the use of all this stuff that I grew up with Bugs Bunny, Daffy Duck, and Sylvester and Steve. I'm nailed to the cross of my own improvisation.
So that's from you, not Michelinie?
Yes.
Okay. All right. We just wanted to make sure of that.
Secrets revealed. Because still, even reading that now, I crack up. It's hilarious.
It's just nonsense. But my feeling is
you can't not think of that Sylvester and Tweety cartoon. You know what I mean? He's trying to suck Tweety up through the claw. It's hilarious.
That was precisely.
Well, it comes through. Well done.
Now you mentioned that you hadn't seen Have you seen the latest movie?
Let me see. I saw the first one, and I saw the one with Sean Connery. That's it.
Okay.
Oh,
so you haven't
okay.
seen the latest. So if somebody came to you now, I guess Dark Horse is the one with the license. If somebody came to you right now and said, "We'd like you to write and pencil a new Indiana Jones adventure," what would your answer be?
My answer would be I don't pencil. I haven't delivered pencils on a job since the 80s. Okay. I deliver finished art. Those days are gone. My answer would be, well, I'll tell you what I was going to do 2 years ago.
Yes, that's what I've been waiting for.
Now that you bring it up.
I was approached back when the Lucasfilm guys were in the process of doing crossovers, okay? There was going to be the Superman Star Wars book. You know about that?
No.
We do not.
All right, you don't know about that. And the Batman Indy Jones book.
Ooh.
Do tell.
Interesting.
Feel free to tell us more.
I was going to do the Indiana Jones Batman crossover.
Mm-hmm. Care to divulge any other details on that, or no? Or is that all we get?
1939, Indiana Jones investigates as an anthropologist reports of a mysterious Batwing style man-sized figure haunting Gotham City.
I'm already in. I'm in.
Right?
I'm in.
So where did this go?
It collapsed for a number of reasons, none of which I completely understand.
Hmm. I mean, how far into the process were you guys with this? I mean,
we'd shaken hands, and I was ready to go whenever they were ready to pull the trigger, and that's where it ended.
Had you already started to build some ideas about this? Were you writing the plot?
Any art?
No, I mean, basically, it was going to be Indiana. It was going to be a 4-issue series. Indy was going to be the first issue would be Indiana tracking down this mysterious bat creature. And ultimately teaming up with him in a plot of some sort, none of which I remember at this point.
Did you have a name for the series?
No.
Any completed art?
Nothing. No, it never got beyond let's do this, and I was waiting, and finally I got the word that the accident had fallen and was gone.
Wow, it's crazy. I mean, what were your thoughts when you heard? I mean, did the project itself kind of seem bizarre to you with these kind of extreme crossovers?
No, it seemed like a natural. It seemed like a great crossover. One of those synergistic, perfect combinations of characters.
And just sort of collapsed under its own weight.
Yeah, apparently.
Okay.
And I don't quite know why. I don't know why it was from DC's problem, Dark Horse's problem, the Lucasfilm. I have no clue. I don't have any idea.
Well, would you tackle a straightforward Indiana Jones adventure today?
Possibly. I certainly would. I found the idea when you were crossover with Batman a lot more appealing.
What kind of time period would you like to see Indiana Jones in?
Oh, I would do it as the 30s. I mean, there's no question
30s,
about
yeah.
it.
That seems like to be the best time.
Either the late 1930s before the war or the late 1940s after the war.
There's one other thing we wanted to mention on that Indiana Jones issue, too, because we know that you have a love of jazz.
I do.
Was the Flatfoot Floogie with the Floy Floy, was that yours?
I'm not sure I remember what context that was.
It was the opening of the Raven Nest, and they go in, and one of the guys is hanging a banner, and he happens to just be singing that song in the background.
Probably. Maybe. I'm not so sure. That might be Michelinie's. I don't know.
It just seemed like it might fall in with your sensibilities there.
That's what Floogie with the Floy Floy is not a big part of my background.
We hope not, especially now that we know what the whole song means.
It certainly wasn't. Yeah, it certainly wasn't part of our background either. Hey, and it's interesting too. You mentioned Star Wars and Superman because there was an actual. It's probably around the same time too. There was a Star Wars Indiana Jones crossover. Indiana Jones had found the Millennium Falcon, which had crashed, and he found the skeleton of Han Solo with Chewbacca was sort of the Bigfoot off in the woods.
Yeah, he was the Bigfoot in the woods. Yeah, and he was a legend.
I have no memory of that whatsoever.
It's interesting you mentioned that because it's probably around that same time. So I'm wondering if that's how it sort of manifested itself. The
crossover stuff is more recent than vintage.
This was Star Wars Tales. I think was it within the last 10 years?
Yeah, it was.
Maybe.
It was.
So it's interesting. But tell me what you're working on now. We sort of mentioned this, but yeah, go ahead.
I'm doing the sequel to Black Kiss, which is horrible and disgusting, and I'm about to start a revival of Buck Rogers.
Ooh.
For which publishing company, and when can we look for it?
It'll probably be in the autumn or winter, and it's for Hermes Publications.
And is this a miniseries, a regular series?
Mini. And it's I'm real excited about it.
TV-ish version, old serial version?
No.
You said you like TV. I'm just saying. I'm just
that was
asking.
pretty ghastly. No, that's not my world.
No Aaron Gray.
Happened in my lifetime.
Well, we'll definitely be looking for that.
It's pretty much what you'd expect from me if I were doing Buck Rogers. It's going to be a real return to the tradition,
and
in a very specific way.
You're writing and doing all the artwork?
Pardon me?
You're writing and doing all the artwork?
Yes.
Fantastic.
That sounds great.
Yeah, we'll look forward to seeing that too. Now, some of your properties I know was there a possibility that they were being turned into either movies or TV shows? Is that still?
I had no luck whatsoever in that, and I'm always hopeful, but nothing's happened yet, and I keep my expectations to a minimum.
In Hollywood, I can't imagine you'd have to do anything other than that. So.
Well, I just keep my head down and hope for the best.
And a recent Avengers project as well, too. So very timely.
Had a great time with that. Yeah, that was a very satisfying and exciting job. I had a good time with that.
And what'd you think of the movie?
Liked it, didn't love it.
Fair enough. I probably wouldn't expect any other answer from you than that one.
Oh, no, I was expecting to love it unequivocally. The way I said, for example, I loved Captain America. I didn't think that Avengers was as good as Captain America. I thought the Hulk stuff in the Avengers was amazing.
Yeah, they finally got the character right.
Fantastic. Ruffalo was astonishing. And I love the idea of using Loki as a dish rag. That was just really kidding.
Well, you're going to be happy because he signed to 6 more. So.
Well, I'm looking forward to it.
Very cool. Well, I'll tell you what, we're looking forward to more of your work coming out. We're excited about the Buck Rogers project that you've got coming out too. All the different things you mentioned, and we really appreciate you taking some time joining us again here on the IndieCast and talking about Indiana Jones. So,
thanks
very much.
As I said, I'm always willing to mistake attention for affection.
What a character, man. Jeez.
He is. I mean, there's very honest. Howard Chaykin does not pull any punches, and really fascinating to hear about that Indy Batman crossover. I want that.
Yeah, the more I think about that, the more it just really fascinates me.
Well, there was all those crazy crossovers back in the 90s with Dark Horse and Marvel and DC. I mean, you had Batman,
Predators, yeah,
Superman,
and
Alien,
yeah.
So we had those. So yeah, it almost seemed like a natural indie Batman. So I would like to see that. So yeah, who knows? Maybe it'll be on somebody's drawing board at some point.
Yeah, and the summer-long Further Adventures anniversary celebration will continue with a 2-part interview with artist Kerry Gamble.
There's more?
There's more. But wait, there's more. And Kerry let us in on a little bit of an interesting tidbit about some lost indie artwork.
That's another one of those things that comes out of these interviews. That we're talking, and then all of a sudden it's like, oh, by the way, we've got that coming up on the next IndieCast, and you
tease
will not,
that a little bit. Let's tease that one just a little bit.
You will not want to miss out on that, and we don't want to say which artwork it is, but it is definitely some indie artwork that exists out there.
Yeah, again, something that we didn't even know was out there, something that we didn't even know took place, and yeah, here we go.
And uncovering some more. That's what we do here on Further Adventures, uncovering those lost Indiana Jones treasures.
Yes, and we will have even more surprise guests as we look ahead to issues 9 and 10. Want to see what we have in the mailbox this week, Joe?
Sure.
Mister, get your arm out of that mailbox. I mean now.
Oh, dear me. I haven't had so much trouble delivering a package since the incident in Vienna.
We heard again from Laird Malamed, who is the co-host of the John Williams specials here on the IndieCast, and he also worked on the Young Indiana Jones Chronicles back in the day. Always good to hear from Laird. Hey guys, just finally reading Further Adventures of Indiana Jones number 5 so I can listen to your current segment on the IndieCast. I was so happy to see Egham, England mentioned. When my family and I lived in the UK, we lived next to Egham in Englefield Green. Egham is a small town about 40 minutes by train outside of London and pretty close to Heathrow. Of course, even today it looks nothing like the exterior shot of Mrs. May's flat, which suggests more of a London street setting. Egham in 1936 probably did not have a building over 2 stories, and almost assuredly no residences that big, but Who cares? It was awesome to read about another connection to Indiana Jones. Keep up the amazing reviews, interviews, and reminiscences in your segments. Hey, thanks, Laird, for writing in, and hopefully you enjoyed the Howard Chaykin interview, and as Keith mentioned, Carrie Gamble's coming up next, and there are plenty more interviews coming up with creators of the Further Adventures of Indiana Jones. So thanks for writing in, Laird, and we want to hear from the other listeners as well, too. So if you've got a favorite Further Adventures tale, you want to talk about the segment, want to ask us about some of the creators, or you've got some ideas, send us an email. Keith, where can they send those?
They can send them to us at thefurtheradventures@gmail.com. And be sure to come over and visit us on our Facebook page at The Further Adventures of Indiana Jones.
Okay, that's it for the day then.
Well, time's up for the Further Adventures today. Looking forward to Carrie Gamble, two-parter coming up. Keith, happy anniversary, my friend.
And happy anniversary to you. Thanks again to Ed and all the listeners who have made us keep wanting to go on after a year. We're a year in, Joe, and we've only covered 6 issues.
That's true. I didn't even know if we'd have enough material just to even cover you. And I'm sure there are some that would argue that we don't, but hopefully there are a lot out there that are enjoying this, and we're having fun doing it.
There's always stuff that's being uncovered here on the Further Adventures of Indiana Jones.